On this edition of The Conversation, we discuss matters of national importance generally, as well as party politics, both internally and externally. And our guest today for that conversation is hard-hitting Councillor for the Papine Division, Venesha Phillips. Welcome to The Conversation. How are you?
Hi, I'm good, Kwame. Thanks for having me.
So, I noticed that when you were heading to us, you appeared to be a woman that was on a mission, a very serious woman. And so I can't help but ask, is that what we should take away from here? I want to understand, who is Venesha Phillips?
Just the average Jamaican girl who wants to see greatness manifested in Jamaica and in the Jamaican people. That's Venesha in a nutshell.
In a nutshell. All right, so we want to open that nutshell today. So we're looking at, you're a councillor now in the Papine Division. What has it been like being councillor in that division? What's the level of reliance that you have had to have on other folks to get your things done, or it's a little easier for you being who you are?
Generally, as a representative, you have to be creative in order to be effective, because the system as it is fraught with red tapes, bureaucracies, traditions, some of them not so good, you know, and so you really have to mount those hurdles. But my propelling force has always been the people of the Papine Division. That, for me, is my greatest takeaway from politics. I think it is more about engaging first to understand the needs and then keeping it real with the people in order to meet those needs. They know that you will encounter hurdles in terms of resources to make some things happen, but there are other greater social needs that as a leader you can in fact, you know, help to alleviate, and that doesn't take the same actual physical resources that you would require to do the infrastructural work, whether physical or social. But as the political representative, you are so much more. You're a big sister, you're a mother, you're an aunt, you're a mentor. And yes, you have to be a leader. And so the underpinning for me is really relying on, you know, the strength given to me by the people and my own determination. Intrinsic motivation at any level in politics, whether the central government level or the local government level, is key. Intrinsic motivation. You have to be in it as, I don't think I should borrow anybody's words, you know. You have to look at the outcome, because trust me, the income is not there.
So, wow. So you spoke about bureaucracy, and I'd imagine that there is an MP that's in charge of the whole area. What difficulties do you generally encounter in terms of getting your job done, because you have to go to an MP and to get certain things done, and so you have to navigate around the red tapes? How do you get that?
Well, let me put that in perspective for you. You have to work with an MP, but you don't have to go to or through an MP. It is all, you have to remember that sometimes you'll be councillor and your member of parliament might be from a different political party. And so the landscape is as such that they're not your supervisors or your seniors. They're your colleagues on a different platform. So your remit is, some of it, they're, you know, basically, there is a meeting of some of the roles, but then the others are clearly demarcated. So while they appear to be very, very similar, you can be clear as a councillor what your role is as against that of the member of parliament.
Is it difficult? Is it difficult to manage that particular division? And is it difficult to manage the relationship between you and your colleagues, so to speak?
It will be difficult if you have a difficulty dealing with people generally, because you're talking about the personalities and the politics of personalities. So when you're dealing with your constituents, you're talking about different personalities across different spectrum. And when you're dealing with the member of parliament, it's the same thing. If you're from the same political party, that doesn't mean that you won't have differences. And if you're from the opposite political party, chances are sometimes the relationship might even be better. That might surprise you. But it has had its rigors. You have to navigate those. Sometimes you give in to the politics of the day, and it can further complicate things, but it doesn't have to be perpetual antagonism. You can, in the interest of the people, find that middle ground if you truly want to do that in order to make it work.
Would you say that you've been able to sufficiently manage that particular aspect of the relationship that you have?
At every juncture that I wanted to, yes. I mean, if you don't want honesty, you have to tell me first.
No.
It's because, I mean, there are times when you become the antagonists. The antagonist because you believe it is required. You see, it's not about, I consider myself a political rebel without apology. But I apply whatever cause as the force or the guiding principle on which I underpin that rebel-like character. Sometimes, of course, it can be off-putting for some because you have to remember we operate in a very hypocritical society. And yes, and classism is real.
Unpack that.
Because I'll tell you something, we like to glamorize things in Jamaica. We like to sugarcoat things, right? And I believe that the politics does not need glamorizing or sugarcoating. It actually needs real people who are upfront with people, who are going to just give it to you, not necessarily raw and uncut, but simplify it so that you are clear, rather than to cloak it and give you salt as granulated sugar.
All right. So tell me, in an earlier conversation or discussion that we would have had, you would have disclosed to me that you have been involved in politics for quite a while now. Tell us, how did you get involved, and what was who was your primary mentor as far as your political aspirations were concerned?
You know, we say some people born with some things. I think probably I was born to be political. My high school friends in particular, and probably some persons who went to Rollington Town Primary with me will probably say the same thing. But my high school friends in particular always say, you know something, we did always know you're going to be a politician in a bit. Because they saw the makings of it, I suppose, in my advocacy as a student council rep from first form to all the way to fifth form. But I grew up, my father was Deputy General Secretary of the PNP YO during the Paul Burke era. And he served under Michael Manley as part of the YO and its leadership. I later became vice president of the PNP YO. You asked me about mentors. You see, I grew up during that period when we used to talk about, and probably you're too young, the people for Joshua.
No, man,
and the people for Joshua would have been Michael Joshua Manley, as we call it.
Michael Manley.
So yes, I grew up under the people for Joshua banner, and then we started to stay well with Eric Bell, and then there was John Jr. for us. But the female figure in all of that.
Onward.
You want me to give him age now? And then, of course, in the middle of all of that was that lone female that I would have seen up close and personal in Sister P. And everybody know, I think in Jamaica knows my relationship with her is one of endless love. And so if I were to capture for you my mentor, I'd say I honestly want to do service to Danny Buck in his grave, God rest his soul, but Michael, Portia, you know, and of course, Donald Barrington Buchanan.
So DB, Michael, Portia. What about DK?
Jesus, DK must be saying, you see, it's a good thing. DK must be saying, little girl, because DK has been one of those persons in the latter years, to be honest, who sat down and told me a lot of things about my dad in the politics that I would not have known. And, you know, he would have also helped to just make me understand what it was that I was doing that probably I even didn't understand. And, you know, he encouraged me to stay within my purpose and conviction. And that doesn't mean staying within the PNP. Let us be clear on that. He said my purpose and conviction. And so I just want to make that categorically clear.
Don't worry, I'll make a note of that.
So, you know, but he was one of those persons who said to me that always keep my character at the center of my overall operations. And I have tried to do that. So God rest his soul. DK was one of all those persons that I credit for my interest in wanting to grow in the politics. But when you talk about mentors, like I said, I think every child back in those days, Michael Manley was it, you know, for us, because he was a person that every drop of the word we would want to be able to capture and to manifest in our lives, yeah.
So given what you have just described to us, would you say, well, has there been any change? How different is the political landscape now? Now that you're in it, heavily involved in it, as opposed to when it was the Joshua era or Sister P era, any one of those eras? How much different are we looking at?
It has been a seismic shift. You know, when we think, since we just had the recent earthquake, yeah, it is that kind of shift that you would have seen. No, I don't think it's for the better, for worse, in terms of socially. Yes, socially, I think we have gotten, in terms of our thinking, progressively worse. And it is not unique to Jamaica. It is what you're seeing right across the world, socially and politically. You are seeing a lot more half-educated people, not certified people now, educated people. So people probably have greater access now to universities and stuff like that, but are they coming out more educated to be able to see the issues for really what they truly are? Or are we in an era where anything goes and I want some things and I want it now? I mean, I know I never mentioned Dr. Peter Phillips among those because he would have, for me, came into my own set later on in life, and I have had a lot of, you know, significant takeaways from him as well. But when I speak today, I look at what I call my generation people, and I see like Andrew Oldness, and I'm thinking, okay, this is our role, and how well is he delivering what we need to do to return the ground to some kind of stability and sobriety, because I believe that we are on shaky ground socially in Jamaica, not just because of politics, but because of the social decay that has been allowed to take place with the breakdown in the homes and all of that. And so right now, the burden is now being placed, reasonably or unreasonably, on politicians to return not just political stability to our country, but social stability. So politicians are now being required to be parents of kids probably you never knew existed. It is just a reality that comes with the job.
So would you say then that we are worse off, or we potentially can become worse off?
I believe that where we are now, we are ripe for the picking in terms of saving this generation and to be able to give generations to come a better pivot from which they can launch to, you know, prosperous ideals.
All right, I'll hold you right there. You're watching The Conversation. I'm Kwame Thomas. We'll be right back. Keep on. Welcome back to The Conversation. Just before the break, well, a little before the break, you were talking and you spoke about holding on to your integrity and staying in your purpose, and that does not necessarily mean staying into or staying inside of a party. Tell us about that. I've looked in the paper and I see where a publication came out nearly 2 years after you left a particular party, and I'm not sure what to make of that, why so late. So the first question would have been, what's your relationship like with said political party?
That would be the PNP. I have no difficulty saying the name. I used to be a member of the PNP, and right, as you correctly said, I would have resigned from the PNP, withdrew my membership properly some 2.5 years ago. Mm-hmm. That journey started well before that. I had been basically wrestling with myself and looking at everything to see whether or not there was any possibility that I could remain and be of service that made sense, because you don't just be a body in a suit present in a particular place. So I don't just want to be an orange-clad person that says yay, yay, yay. I wanted to know that I would have been able to serve a useful purpose. And I agonized over that for weeks, probably over 1.5 years. And I came to the conclusion that it was not possible so to do. And so I properly made my exit.
So could we then, is it a case whereby you don't feel as though you were being used or utilized enough, your talents weren't being honed enough, or so pretty much you were underutilized in that party? there's a danger when we start to put I and yous in terms of our role in leadership, and that's what I tried not to do. And then I'm going to say that as a voice, as one of the leaders within the movement at the level I was at, you know, I would have tried my best at the time, at every meeting I could, in every forum I could have, to put, you know, test the issues to the leadership central, just to say, bring the issues from the streets into the room so that policies could be formulated around the realities of the street and not what we were dreaming them to be or what we wanted to dictate them to be. I wanted to see an organization that was conversant with the issues of the people in a real way and not in a bubble, not operating in a bubble. And
I did not believe at the time that what was coming, because remember my introduction to the PNP as a political movement was through an ideological grounding that was people-centric. It was about building people. It was about wrapping services around people and not wrapping people around services. Right. Services must be there to build and grow people. Right? Not people here to grow businesses. We grow them through our service that we give, but that service should turn around and serve us by bettering our quality of life. And the discussion was not tending in the direction that showed me that that's where the move that we were going to go. And so it moved in my mind from a movement to an organization. And there's a stark difference there.
So would it be that that organization was now comprised of persons who were there to, what's the term, drink milk as opposed to count cows?
I don't know if that's the way to capture it. I felt like it was most, I think the persons who were now in the ascendancy were about, or are about, power rather than progressive politics. Jamaica needs progressive politics that will develop people, not power-hungry people who want to be categorized as tapenarists and to probably drink milk and not be concerned about the starving cows. So for me, I wanted to see politics in Jamaica grow to the levels that young people would aspire to be politicians, to lead. We would attract the best of the best and the brightest of the brightest. We would attract the most radical who will keep the conversation alive and reality always fresh in our minds so we can be competitive on the world stage, not just through Usain Bolt and Shelley and all the others who do us well in sports, but through our mental capacity and, you know, through all of that qualitative stuff that would show the world that Jamaica was not just physically, you know, agile and all of that, that is great, but that we were also great thinkers. And you are seeing some elements of it now. But you're seeing it coming from the government. You see it coming from Nigel Clark. Look at what has happened with the economy. Come on.
All right. So let's take a few steps back. So you would have disclosed that you were near and dear to Dr. Peter Phillips.
Yes.
And my question is, when he exited, or he began to plan or chart his exit, was that the straw that broke the camel's back in terms of making you decide that, listen, this is no longer for me, this party is no longer for me, let me leave? No.
No, because that would then mean that I would have been a sycophant of Dr. Phillips, and I think that would have disappointed him. Well, it would have meant that I was into the politics of personality, and that too would have disappointed him. But no, I had to exit when, I can be straight with you, when before the race between Mark Golding and Lisa Hanna, I would have sat with Philip Paulwell first, then later on to have discussions with Dr. Phillips about the dangers of that based on things that I probably won't say from your chair because those were relative to discussions that took place in a private executive meeting, observations I made that made me think that, hey, bad decision, bad direction. And so I would have gone to them to say, look, if this results, then I'm out, because it would mean that it's not for me. It's not what I want to see of a movement, and I don't believe that that would have been in the interest of the greater good of Jamaica. I would have said that to them in several different ways. And so when, on that evening when Mark Golding was announced, I threw caution to the wind, and I would have gone to the first meeting of the NEC at Jamaica College, I think it was. And when I went to that meeting, and I said, okay, let me just, you know, give it a try and see what happens. I remember looking at a senior member, and I can name him because I did. I remember I went over to John Juna, and I said to him, thank God I'm right, because for a moment I felt like, you know, I wasn't doing justice to this thing. So thank God Mark Golding, by his very first presentation as leader, would have proven all my sentiments that I held to be correct. And so at that particular time, that was the last time I had any interaction with the movement. Well, the movement died and the organization was born. But they still trade as PNP, but I don't believe that they, well, if you ask every single PNP of old, they will tell you that it is not the PNP today. So even though the name is in place, it is not the same organization. And Mark Golding has told you that it's a new party with a new leader. He has said that on the political platform. And so I left on that day, and I've never been back since, because I was certain that I could not be a part of an organization coming from a movement that served people to an organization that I wasn't ever going to be certain as to what it would be about. So
fast forward now, 2.5, 3 years later, is Mark Golding still the man to lead the People's National Party?
I never thought he was. I never thought he should have been leader. I said that. You might recall that there was a very controversial issue out of a bigger meeting at the conference center where it dominated the media in what I consider to be a negative way, because I was making the point to the conference, beseeching them not to go down that path, because it would have meant the death of an 84-year-old movement. And today we're seeing, you know, what is going on with the PNP. It is a shadow of its former self. Mark Golding, 3 years later, has not been able to say to the Jamaican people, and the numbers are there, it's not my words, he cannot even go past 12 to 14%. The numbers are there to show you that he cannot convince the people of Jamaica that I am even to be considered for Jamaica House to do. What
though would you say is so wrong with Mark Golding? Why you made that statement?
I think Mark Golding is not really serious about the work that is involved in political leadership. I think Mark Golding is an accomplished businessman, and so this to him is probably another venture that could challenge him as a businessman. But you see, that venture that he might be looking at is our lives, right? And so what you need is someone who is really keen on building a country with everything that comes with it. You need the passion for it. You don't have to love people to manage them, but you definitely have to love people to lead them, right? And so it is important for us to understand that politics is a passionate thing, and we should not have a politics that's devoid of passion. Mark Golding has not yet said to any of us, whether you're a PNP, JLP, or apathetic, or no P at all, that look here, I am really serious about all the mumbo-jumbo that you hear, Andrew Holness, Nigel Clark, Tufton, even people on the PNP benches talking about Dr. Phillips, for example. Mark Golding has not said to you that, look here, I am a Phillips, I believe in the message. I'm one of those advocates. He has not said so. One of the first things Mark Golding did, you know, when he came as leader, was he removed Norman Manley's name from the creator or founder of the PNP and replaced it with O.T. Fairclough's name. He could have, if you wanted to introduce O.T.'s value to the conversation, it could have been done in a way that would have been a uniting force, not a divisive one. If you look at the approach to his politics, it's one that is screaming fire in the room but not pointing you to the hydrant and not saying how we can prevent fires in the future. And that is instability in the making. Jamaica has come through much instability. We are looking now for sobriety. We're looking for stability. And so Mark Golding is not a part of that process. And I do not believe the PNP should even keep him as opposition leader, because with Andrew Holness, the JLP, and what they are posturing to do, and what they have done so far, what you need in an opposition is a stabilizing force that's going to hold them to account properly. Without, if you talk about crime, Mark Golding talk about Integrity Commission. If you talk about education, you go back to the same, because he has nothing to offer to the conversation.
So let me ask then, could it be that you're nostalgic, you're holding on to a People's National Party that no longer exists?
Well, I'm holding on to the ideals that it gave. And I'll tell you something else. It's a joke I was sharing with my colleagues as we drove here, that one of the things I remember so well is, even I used to repeat it on a political platform, you know, Andrew Holness, I used Michael Manley playbook. Have you heard that before? I'm sure you've heard that, you've read it, you've seen it everywhere. If you look on social media, the comrade said, oh, a Manley playbook you may use. And then I sat down and I said, then hold on a second. If Mark take up Michael Manley playbook and throw it in the garbage, and Andrew, they said, but look at you, and take it out and dust it off and say, because there is merit to this playbook. And you're seeing it in the health sector. You're seeing it in the social housing assistance programs. You're seeing it in the uptick in our economy. You're seeing it in the tourism.
Pause you right there. Hold it right there. We go to our second break. You're watching the conversation. welcome back to the conversation where we're having a discussion, a very fiery discussion with the Councillor of the Papine Division, Venesha. So just before we went to the break, you were telling us how one man's trash is another man's treasure. Continue on that.
Right. So I'm just saying to you that sometimes we say things and we have not really processed it the way we really ought properly to. Because, you know, for so many years I would have heard that, you know, oh, Andrew Holness is using Michael Manley playbook. And if you're a comrade and you're saying that with conviction, you're actually saying, and you believe in Michael Manley and what he stood for, then you're actually saying that Andrew Holness is really ticking the boxes that you want ticked. So the question you should be having in your PNP space is, why have we abandoned Michael Manley's playbook and have left it, as you said, to become the treasure of someone else? And by the way, when we look at where we are socially, you know, it doesn't matter what the color of your politics is. You cannot disagree with the fact that while there are some serious shortcomings in relation to crime and transparency and accountability that translates into corruption if you're not careful, right? Those are the downside to the government. But when you're talking about all the other deliverables, you are actually seeing an upward trend. For the first time, whether we like it or not, and I sat down almost in tears, you know, to say, how is it that, one, coming out of one of the worst pandemics the world probably has ever recorded, if we go by readings, right, that Andrew Holness stroke Nigel Clark would have been able to steer Jamaica out of it in a way that the Great America and others could not have done on the same equal footing with a greater economic size than ours. You know, when you look, even they're asking the question, but not only that, what we have seen again is the greatest transfer of revenue back to of earnings of the country back to the public sector and the people by way of the remunerations and the salary packages revisions that we have seen. Yes, we have had some disquiet on the part of teachers in relation to whether principals got more than them and how that worked out. Their union should have dealt with, and probably should still deal with, the smoothing out of those lines. But the truth be told is, it is the greatest transfer back to the people that we have ever seen, certainly in my existence. And I, as someone who have sat as a comrade for a long time, can say that without reservation, because as Jamaicans, that's what we're supposed to do. So
right now, you are pretty much saying that you believe that the Andrew Holness-led JLP is the better option to lead the country at this time. That's
absolutely at this time. You have had nothing to suggest that you can gamble even, because it would be a gamble, because we have nothing on paper to say, all right, this look better. So because we really can't pull a genie out of a bottle to tell us what Mark could possibly come with down the road, then we probably would have to go play poker and say, all right, we hope that Mark can come through with something. No, can you afford that at this time, to turn back the gain and risk turning back all the gains that we have made so far? We have some grounds to cover, absolutely. But are we on the right path? I believe so. And the indicators are there to back that up in terms of statistics. So the truth be told is that I want to see a more humbled government under Andrew Holness. I want to see more emphasis placed on accountability.
Are you seeing he's arrogant? The government is arrogant?
There are aspects of arrogance there that still needs to be addressed. And it comes with having a large majority, you know. There is some amount of complacency. Sometimes it's a false sense of security. But I believe that you are actually seeing a reality check when they hear the voices, right? That, hey, back up a second, your majority size means nothing if we don't ensure that it stays that way. So they're now getting that people check, which is critical. But I believe that we have really, really been pushing towards that upward path that Jamaica really properly ought to have been on for some time now, but for whatever reason, politically and socially, we were just not able to mount those hurdles.
So there are many persons especially from Mark Golding's camp, who would argue that you are a woman who is bitter because you did not have your way. What would you say to those folks?
They have not yet been able to tell you what my way was. And so that tells you. But I'll tell you something about psychophancy. I could never be that, because I was not schooled that way. in terms, whether it is through high school, through Camperdown, where, well, let me start with Rollington Town Primary. If you drive on St. James Road, 16-8, there's a concrete structure with the words on it, I must earn my place. So and that is where I'm coming from. And then when you went further down the road to 6B Camperdown Road from St. James's Road, you would see something on the wall under Solemn Optima Petenda Sunt that says, only the best is good enough. So you come from having to earn your place, but to earn that place, only your best is going to be good enough. That's the schooling that I came to. And so the People's National Party that I was a part of that no longer exists today is one that said, listen to me, we have to work, we have to be disciplined. And it's not just discipline in our homes, but in our politics and in our school and ultimately in our society. One of my constituents in Papine Division, a young man said to me that a disciplined house means a disciplined community. And a disciplined community will translate into a thriving community. So the value system that the PNP, even through its Values and Attitudes program, promulgated is no longer relevant in an organization led by Mark Golding. So where is the bitterness? Because truth has very little place in some people's politics. Because you have to understand, we've been schooled to be told that truth hurt. No, it doesn't hurt. The truth should not hurt. It should help.
All right. Tell me about the numbers. Earlier, you said that the numbers are there. The last poll that was conducted, it shows the People's National Party and the Jamaica Labour Party almost neck and neck. Why do you think, though, that the PNP cannot gain enough grounds to beat or to replace the JLP?
You know, I like you notice I'm smiling because I'm happy you went for those numbers, because I sat down and I kept wondering what was there to celebrate, because I was looking at the jubilance in Mark Golding talking about, oh, can you imagine you don't have a country to run? And you came with all your business acumen and accolades and all the aids that you can think of and all the halo on your head. And after 3 years, with nothing else to do, you know, other than to study the lay of the land, which you have been a part of, by the way, for the last 10 years, and to appreciate, you know, what is it that is missing so that you can put to the people of Jamaica in a language that is simple to say, hey, guys, here are the missing pieces, and trust me to deliver those missing pieces to make our puzzle complete. Mark Golding has not been able to do that, and that is what accounts for his continued decline. Unfortunately, he is causing an 84-year-old movement that he did very little to build to also be in decline. The truth is that Jamaicans are very perceptive people. And so we, Buju sing about the glamour and the glitter. We know that does not represent a bed of rose. So even though Mark comes with the fanciness and you know, promotes himself as a better ilk than an Andrew Holness, who, by the way, that too, suggesting that Andrew is a Nowherean. It's the craziest, you know, positing I've ever seen. It's the craziest posturing I've ever seen in politics. Because if you're going to come to say to Jamaican people, trust me, because me is a top of our race and me have my money and me come from up there, so the rest of us in Jamaica can actually relate to Andrew Holness' story. We can relate to his student loan delinquency. We can relate to all of that, you know. So we have seen a young man, and by the way, he's in my generation. So we have seen a young man, you know, who, you look at him now and say, but he's a Spanish town man that, you know, who eat bread and cheese and bun and butter up on the campus there and never even could have paid him student loan. And today he's Prime Minister. That's a story for the little boy in Spanish Town and in August Town.
So tell me about now, there seem to be some specific qualities or policies of Andrew Holness that you find appealing, all right? And tell us what are some of those and how do they align with your vision for the country?
He has the passion I spoke about when we started earlier. I have seen that up close and even from a political distance. He is someone, by the way, who is reachable. So he's not a prime minister in quarantine. So he has not lost the common touch. And so that, for me, gives him the platform, the pivot he needs. I believe that he recruits strategically and sensibly. Because as the leader, you don't have to know everything and be the repository of all the knowledge in the world. But what you see him doing by how he is picking even his ministers tells you that he has even graduated from what we would have seen from his mentoring, Mr. Seaga, to today's reality that you and I can look to. So you are not seeing so much of the Mr. Seaga's era today. What you are seeing is the youthfulness of Andrew Holness's administration. When you look at a Nestor Morgan, a Floyd Green, a Rhoda Crawford, a Carencia Morrison, when you look at all of them, you see transition in the JLP. You see the experience and gender balance coming to the fore in a Mrs. Malafu Fort, you know, Dr. Tufton. You look at the stable hands of a Nigel, who I don't believe Dr. Clark is a politician. So here is a technocrat and an academic who brings to the table the kind of glue that is critical to bind it all together. So that gives you where Andrew Holness's head is at. And you should not ignore the significance in how he is able to balance the role of his lifetime partner, no less a person than his wife, who is also in the House. And by the way, as a female, yes, the Speaker of the House now too, with her husband as Prime Minister. So you just look at the balance, because that is not an easy balancing act, you know. Don't take that lightly, because you have to remember that it's a very fine line that he's walking, but he's walking those ropes like the Chinese do in the air.
So then the billion-dollar question, if we can't say trillion-dollar question, is would you be open to serving in the JLP under the leadership of Andrew Holness? And have you been contacted?
Let's start with the former, you know, instead of the latter. So to that one, would I be open to serving?
Yes.
I'm sorry, you like music? So you would know that you remember this song, or are you too old for your K, Sarah, Sarah?
Sarah, whatever will be, will be.
Absolutely. So,
That's not really answering the question.
But it is not actually saying no. Let me tell you, on another program, I was asked if I was open to supporting, which is a very different question from the one you've asked. Suffice it to say, I'll not be a candidate in the next local government election. I've said that. Because I am not one. I'm not looking for a space. It's not that. For me, it's much more. So I definitely will not be a candidate in the next election. But would I be open to serving? Absolutely.
Okay. All right. So you stated that you're no longer seeking re-election as councillor for the Papine division.
Correct.
Are you completely ruling out a return though to representational politics, or are you leaving the option open for the future? Pretty much.
You must never say never. So I would never completely rule out a return to representational politics. But I do believe that, you know, I am able to make a contribution to the political process in my country. And would I want to do that? Absolutely. The extent to which I am able to do that requires some introspection, as well as an examination of where we are and where we're likely to go. But interesting days are ahead. So if you stay tuned, I mean, who knows?
All right. So what's the relationship now between Venesha Phillips and the People's National Party?
I have not been in touch with the leadership of this current organization. But it is not, by the way, let's put it on record, I've never had a fallout with Mark Goldin. I've been harshly critical of his style, but we've never had personal altercation at all from I've known him, ever. In fact, I can't recall anybody on that team. I mean, I used to be probably one of Angela's closest friends. I mean, we're not that anymore, but it's not hostile. So I have no problem. But I'm not in touch with them. But I am in touch with my friends.
But you're not worried. You're not perturbed any at all. You just
no. And that's what you must be mindful of. That when you are as free in your heart, mind, and soul as I am about my decision, then it tells you that I've made the right decision.
So you believe that you have, in fact, made the right decision?
I know that I have. I've prayed about it. I've thought about it. I've discussed it. Yes, I have.
So 2025, that's the next election.
Right.
Right now, we have 49-14 in favor of the Jamaica Labour Party. Do you think that the PNP stand any chance whatsoever of turning the tide in their favor?
With less than 2 years to go? It would take a miracle, and not that miracles can't happen, but you have to understand that political miracles is not the same as one of the ones we get in church when the Holy Ghost come down. You actually have to set you know, the stage for people to believe in your product, your political product. The people of Jamaica, make no mistake, we know what the shortcomings are of the government. So we know what we would like to see. And we are certain we are not hearing it or seeing it on any platform of Mark Golding. For the last 3 years, Mark Golding has had a free time. Andrew Holness never had that. He had a pandemic to preside over and all the other things. Mark Golding had nothing else to do but to sit with his team, not 14, but persons who were likely to serve right across, because that's where he would have to pull his cabinet from if he were to come. And so you would expect that he would have had persons on the ground, even from 2 years ago, even if they're not yet candidates, just familiarizing themselves, because that's political strategy, just to be able to contribute to discussion in the different ways so that you can respond to the needs and the issues that are arising in our country. We have not seen that. 3 years squandered under Mark Golding as opposition leader, squandered. That's not something the PNP has ever been used to. It is a robust organization for discussion. Discussion is missing. And because it is missing there, it is missing on their political platform in terms of messages that can resonate. And so I cannot see how, even short of a miracle, I mean, how they could.
We definitely need to get you back here. You know, you can even come over this side if you want to. But we're definitely looking, because I love where the conversation is going. But last question. Do you think it's Mark Golding or the folks around Mark Golding that's causing Mark Golding to be dead wrong?
I think it is Mark, because of the person I met in Mark. I believe, and a lot of comrades disagreed with this, but there has been this false narrative created that Peter Bunting is this influencer. I saw it the other way around from the room of the executive.
Wow. All right, thank you very much. There you have it. This has been the conversation with Venesha Phillips. I am Kwame Thomas. See you next time.